Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you for attending today. We're going to get started. My name is Ronald, and I'll be your webinar host. Before we get into everything, I just want to share a few notes about this webinar. This webinar is one of my hybrid webinars. What that means is what you are seeing and hearing is recorded, but I am live in the chat window to answer any questions that you might have. This allows me more opportunity to interact in the chat and drop resources for you as we go. Feel free to submit any questions there you have throughout the presentation. Also, if you have to step away for a minute or leave early, don't worry. I'll follow up with all attendees with a replay video that you can watch on demand. The goal for this presentation is to help you avoid high credit card processing fees and keep more of what you raise. Just want to start with a thank you. Thanks for what you're doing for your community as a nonprofit professional, and thanks for taking the time to sit in on this webinar. I know what it means to take part of your day for education, and I appreciate you doing that with me today. Thank you very much. Here's the obligatory About Me slide so you'll know who you're listening to today. My name is Ronald Pruitt. I'm the president and founder of For a Good Cause. I've been helping nonprofits build websites and raise money online for over 22 years. I live in Kennesaw, Georgia with my wonderful wife, my lovely mother-in-law, and our two awesome teenage kids. My company, For a Good Cause, is an easy-to-use, effective, and affordable online fundraising platform for small to mid-sized nonprofits. It's an all-in-one platform for online donations, event registration, crowdfunding, peer-to-peer fundraising, and donor management. Nonprofits that use For a Good Cause have donation sizes double national averages and can typically pay back their investment in our software with only one donation each month. You can check us out at foragoodcause.com. You can read my blog there and follow me on Twitter at 4AGC. Here's what we'll be up to today. We're going to work our way through the costs associated with credit card processing. Give you more tools and in your tool belt there to help you go out and negotiate the best rates for yourself and hopefully keep more of what you raise. I have worked with virtually every major payment provider or merchant processor over the last 22 years. That's part of what we do here is connect our platform to the nonprofit's payment provider. This will be an honest discussion based on what I've learned about credit card processing over the last 2 decades. This session will primarily be geared toward understanding how to keep your costs low when accepting online payments. Those are those card not present transactions. You're taking the card, but the card's not in your physical presence. But most of the principles that we go over will also apply to card present transactions, those swiped or chip card payments. Please note, as we go through the presentation, I will use the term credit card processing, but this also applies to debit cards, and I may interchange the terms credit card processor, merchant processor, payment provider. These all refer to the company or companies that are providing you online payment services. If you stick around to the end, which I hope you will, I'll have a free resource for you, our How to Choose the Right Payment Processor Guide. This guide includes a list of considerations when choosing a payment processor and a breakdown of a couple of popular providers. And as we go along, if you have questions, post them in the chat. Again, if this is one of my scheduled sessions, then I am in there to answer any question that you have. If I don't get to your question, I will certainly follow up with you after. If you're watching this later as a recording and have questions, I'll give my contact information at the end. Feel free to shoot me any question that you have or request any resource offered. Here we go. Let's start with a poll to kind of gauge our audience to see how well you know how much you're paying for credit card processing. The cost for credit card processing can be very confusing. Hopefully we're going to clear up some of that today. Do you have a handle on what you're paying? Look on the right side near the chat window. I'd love for you to share your answers with the others that are attending. Do you know exactly what you're paying? Have a pretty good idea or no idea at all? We find many nonprofits in the last category, so if you find yourself there, you are not alone. Hopefully, after this webinar, you'll have a better handle on your cost. I'll give you a moment longer to complete that. I appreciate you sharing. To help you understand the costs around credit card processing, we should understand how the payment process itself works. What types of providers are involved? This is going to help you see where in this process you are getting charged. So let's take a look at the roadmap. How an online credit card donation gets from the donor to your bank account. This will help you understand who's going to bill you for this service. So the donor puts in their information as first step here into your donation page, some other e-commerce page. The donor's credit card information is then passed to the payment gateway. Think of a payment gateway as a software equivalent to a credit card terminal you might swipe your card through at a Walmart, for example. It virtually swipes the card, communicates with the card issuer, and to see if that card should be approved. If the card is approved, then it sends back down to your donation page, transaction ID and approval, so that page can send the thank you email, record the transaction, etc. On a nightly basis, the payment gateway will batch all the transactions from that day and send it to your merchant account. Think of a merchant account like a credit account with a bank. It will front you for the funds processed and move those funds into your bank account, and then it will reimburse itself from the card issuing banks. The merchant account is the money mover in this process. Your merchant account is not your bank account. It is a separate account that funds your bank account for the credit card transactions that you have processed. Typically, between 1 to 3 days, you will see the funds from the transaction deposited into your bank account. I'll sometimes make an analogy to offline processing with this. You know, your website, that's like a physical store where you're selling products, and it should make it safe and easy to shop there. The payment gateway is the cash register that you're swiping your card through. The merchant account's the bank truck that rolls up every night, takes the money out of that register, and puts it into your bank account for you. Okay? Now, where in this process are you getting charged? You're getting charged to swipe the card. That's the payment gateway. You're getting charged to move the money. That's the merchant account. So you will typically see fees from these two entities. Sometimes the gateway and the merchant account are a single product. Sometimes they are separate products. Sometimes they are provided by the same company. Sometimes they're provided by separate companies. There is no right or wrong way to acquire these products, but you'll need both aspects, the charging of the card and the moving of the funds, and you can expect to incur fees from each aspect. You will typically see a combination of a monthly fee, flat transaction fee, or percentage-based transaction fee for your credit card processing. Let's break down where these fees come from. They all originate with the credit card issuers: Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express, etc. The fees you pay when you accept credit cards are sometimes called merchant fees. The term merchant fees covers all the costs of payment processing that are passed on to you, the merchant. These fees can include interchange fees, service fees, and the payment processor's markup. The interchange fee is the percentage rate and a flat fee attached to a particular card by that card company. Every card has a different interchange rate. These interchange rates can also vary by the type of organization that will be processing the card. For example, there are lower interchange fees or interchange rates for nonprofits. The interchange rate cannot be negotiated. This is set by the card companies, and it has to be paid by your payment provider. All providers pay the same wholesale rates. If someone tells you they can get you lower than that interchange rate, they are scamming you. The payment processor makes money off these two items here: service fees and markup. The service fees, those are monthly fees, flat transaction fees, other fees basically to provide the service to you. And the markup, that's some percentage or extra fee added on to the interchange rate before it gets to you. These are the fees that can be negotiated. This is where you can save money. Let's delve a little bit deeper into this. I want to show you some interchange fees so that you can get a sense of what the payment providers are actually being charged here. So we're going to hit the site of a merchant account provider, one of the few that actually does show you what they're being charged. This is a company that some of our clients use, a company called Dharma Merchant Services. So let's take a look at, let's start with Visa. Let's start with their credit cards. And, each card type has different fees associated with it. And, regular run-of-the-mill Visa, MasterCard with no rewards, those are typically less expensive. Rewards are a little more expensive, and then you get into these signature kind of corporate platinum cards. Those are more expensive to process because the card companies want to get paid back for all the benefits that they're giving to card holders. So let's take a look at what a 501c3 charity pays for Visa and on the interchange fee, 1.35% and 5 cents. And that's across all Visa credit cards. Debit cards, if we look at those are always cheaper to accept for the payment provider than a credit card. And typically there are two types, regulated debit and exempt debit. That's typically big bank card, that's Bank of America, Chase, and such. And then smaller banks will have their own, kind of a credit union card. If we look at charity rates there, if you're a 501c3, you're paying 0.5%, 22 cents. That's the interchange fee. A little bit more for credit union card. But you can see that debit cards are much less expensive for a payment provider to process on your behalf. MasterCard, a little bit higher. If we look at the charity rates on a credit card, 2% and 10 cents per transaction. Debit cards, same for charity, 0.5% and 22 cents for the big bank cards. Close to 1.5% there for the credit union cards. American Express, this used to be completely different, but now it kind of works on they have the interchange rates that typically providers are marking up. Kind of depends on your transaction size. Small transactions are less, around 2%. Larger transactions are going to take a little more. American Express is more expensive than Visa and MasterCard, but not as much as they used to be. So there just gives you a little sense of what the payment providers themselves are getting charged, which can help you, better inform you when you're out trying to find that right payment processor and negotiating your own pricing plan. So that's what we're going to look at next. What are the types of pricing plans that are offered to you? How do they take these interchange rates, add their service fees, add their markup, and put those into a plan for you? You'll need to seek out a plan that works best for your nonprofit. There is no one best provider. There is no one best rate. There is no one best plan. You need to choose what works best for your nonprofit. And one of the biggest ways you can reduce your rates is making sure that you fit well with a particular pricing plan. So let's look at some of what those are. The simplest one is the flat rate plans. This is kind of pay-as-you-go pricing. You'll pay a percentage or a percentage plus a flat fee whenever you have a successful transaction. These typically do not have any monthly fees. Think of a provider like Square that charges 2.9% and 30 cents per transaction with no monthly fees. This can be pretty good for a low volume merchant because there's no monthly fees. So you're not carrying a lot of cost every month to have the service. Next up is something called a tiered plan. Now, I'm kind of including this one because I want you to recognize it and I want you to avoid it. We just showed that different cards have different rates associated with them. And That's those interchange rates, interchange fees. This particular model takes different groups of cards and puts them into buckets, and each bucket has an assigned rate to it. So certain cards might qualify in bucket 1, bucket 2, bucket 3, and so on. A lot of times these are named qualified, mid-tier, unqualified. If you typically hear those terms, I probably would walk away from a plan that you're getting pitched on. These plans are not always necessarily bad, but because they don't tell you which cards really go in each bucket, they don't tell you the underlying rates for the interchange rates for what goes in the buckets. It's really an incentive for them to overcharge you. It's also an incentive for them to set up rules that they're called downgrades that push you into a higher bucket at a higher fee. And this can be anything from how you're processing a card, swiped versus keyed, or online versus something else. They just push you into these higher rates. It's just hard to understand what you're paying and why you're paying it. And it just becomes a vehicle for the hidden fees that kind of plague the credit card industry. You will typically see a monthly monthly fee, with this plan. But again, something that I would try to avoid. I do like this pricing model, Interchange Plus. This is basically a cost plus model. So the provider adds a constant flat margin on top of the interchange rate. So regardless of the type of card, they're just going to add the same flat margin for themselves on top of whatever the interchange fee is for that card. That helps you know that you're kind of paying the lowest rate that you can on that particular card at that particular time. A lot of times this is quoted as a percentage fee plus a per transaction flat fee above interchange. It's very fair, it's transparent, because you know exactly what the merchant provider is making. So let's say the interchange rate on a particular card is 1.5%. If the margin from the provider is 0.2%, then you would pay 1.7. Typically, you will see a small monthly fee with this particular plan, and it works pretty good for nonprofits at a mid to high volume, and I'll talk about where the dividing line is from my experience. Another model is what's called zero markup subscriptions. This is similar to Interchange Plus, but the margin or markup above the interchange rate is zero. There is no markup. So this company instead makes all of its money off the monthly service fee. The monthly fee is typically larger than you would see with something like Interchange Plus, and it's typically tied to a certain number of transactions that you can run for that price. Whether this model works for you it depends on the number of transactions that you do per month and whether you're maximizing the level that they put you in. It's really all about looking at your number of transactions and looking at that whatever that monthly fee is. And that can vary from provider to provider. Most of the time, this is something that a high volume merchant will go after. Processing 50, 100K a month, something of that nature. This might be something that you can look into. But of these 4 plans, how do you know which one is better for you? The first criteria that you should use to decide what type of pricing package to look for is your monthly volume. How much are you processing each month in online payments? What do you anticipate in the future? So I would love for you to share with your fellow attendees how much you're processing each month. How many people in here are low volume, high volume? Again, I'm going to talk about that dividing line on the next slide here. So look on the right-hand side. You'll see that I've dropped another poll. So take a moment to answer that. How you answer is going to fit in with which of the pricing plans that can work best for you. Give you just another moment to do that. Appreciate you sharing. So what is that dividing line? I put it at $10,000 per month. This is a cutoff that I use from my experience to decide the type of payment plan that you should look for. This is a general rule. You can always ask for a cost comparison from most merchant providers. Ask them to prove that they are less expensive in a particular plan type based on your historical volume. But I found this is a good rule to help narrow your search for that best plan for you, depending on which side of this dividing line that you're on. So if you are under $10,000 a month, you typically will do better with a flat rate provider. Again, because there's no monthly fees. You're not carrying that. And at low volume, that's great. If you are over $10,000 a month, you typically want to choose an Interchange Plus pricing plan. You got the benefits, the built-in nonprofit benefit of the interchange, lower interchange rate for a 501c3 organization. You could tell your merchant provider, hey, go get me that discount. I want to make sure that I'm getting charity rates here. And at this higher volume, you get more exposure to those cheap cards that I showed, debit cards, run-of-the-mill, Visa and MasterCard, and that's going to get you a ton of savings. Let's look at those flat rate providers first. Again, for those people that are under $10K a month. When you think of flat rate providers, you're probably thinking of providers like Square, PayPal, Stripe. Many of these are kind of software companies, providing payment solutions to websites. There are certainly banks and other merchant providers that will sell you a flat rate plan. They're probably not advertising that. Local banks probably is not advertising that. But in the online world, typically these PayPal, Stripe, those are typically who's ruling the roost here. Both are used by many fundraising platforms, so that's also can be a factor here. When you're looking at flat rate plans, make sure you're asking for a nonprofit discount. Make sure you find out how to get that. In this category at For a Good Cause, we support Stripe. We like the technology and the donor experience better than something like PayPal for our low volume nonprofits. Both of those, PayPal and Stripe, do offer a 501c3 discount for nonprofits. Square does not. And Square is mostly offline transactions, although they do have an online merchant accounts now that they're offering. What's typical for the flat rate plans? What should you be looking for? This is what Stripe charges, and for a 501c3 nonprofit, this is a good benchmark, I think, to look for. This is a discount down from their normal 2.9 for most cards. So this can be a good benchmark when you're out in the flat rate world and maybe getting a quote on a flat rate plan from a local bank or something like that. You can kind of compare it to something like Stripe and what you might get there. I should also note, kind of a side note here, there are many fundraising platforms that will roll the fees from something like Stripe or PayPal into their own flat rate plan, and then they will add their own platform markup. That could be an extra 3%, 5%, 10% in addition to what you see here. Try to avoid that. I mean, if you can process less than 10,000, if you process less than 10,000 a month, and you think a flat rate plan can work best for you, you should pay no more for the transaction fees than what you see here. Absolutely not. All right, if you're over 10K a month, let's take a look at the Interchange Plus model a little more here. There are literally thousands of merchant providers that offer Interchange Plus plans. This can range from national banks like Chase or PNC, big conglomerates like First Data that actually run the processing for a lot of other banks across the United States, to smaller independent resellers like Dharma Merchant Services. So many different providers out there. Not all of them are going to advertise an Interchange Plus plan, but hey, I'm telling you now, ask for it. Ask for it by name. You can get it. What should you be looking at maybe as a benchmark? I think this is pretty good. $20 a month. That would be the service fee. If you're looking at our equation again, the markup 0.2% and 10 cents per transaction above that interchange rate. That's a good kind of benchmark when you're out there looking at it. You'll find a lot of these types of providers will match other companies that you're looking at to get your business. They really are looking to get you long term. This is a tiny little margin, that they're making, but again, they're wanting to keep you long term, and they hope that you're doing, a high volume so you can make some money. Let's crunch some numbers here. I want to kind of delve a little bit deeper into how an Interchange Plus, plan saves you money when you get above that 10 grand per month, because it can be very hard to compare a flat rate plan, which has the same rate for every card. You can kind of see, okay, I'm going to pay X dollars out of that particular transaction versus an Interchange Plus plan where, one transaction you might be processing a debit card at one rate, and the next transaction you might be processing a rewards card, at another rate, kind of, or debit card versus a credit card, something of that nature. Again, every card's got its own rate, so sometimes it can be hard to understand what you're looking at. So let's go back on Dharma's site and let's use our little cost calculator here to try and look at what an effective rate can be for an interchange plan. And the little benchmark that I showed you before comes from this, so we'll be kind of looking at that accurately. So let's kind of fill this in. We're going to do the card not present internet transactions. We're going to be a charity. Let's set our volume at 10,000. Our average donation size, we'll set that at we'll set that at 207. That's the average here at For Good Cause for a one-time gift. Let's put ourselves middle of the road. We don't necessarily take just the cheap cards or just the expensive cards. Let's say we do about 20% of our volume is debit cards. And you can see we've got that effective rate, including the monthly fee. The effective rate's around 2%. Which you can see we're getting lower than the flat rate provider, that Stripe type payment processor that's around 2.2, or it can be even higher for something like American Express. You'll see that the more volume that you do gets that rate down because you're getting more exposure to debit cards. The more debit cards you do, maybe it's 40% of what you're doing, that gets your total down, your effective rate down. And you start to get into some really good territory here, less than 2% for an Interchange Plus plan. So at higher volume, this plan can work really, really well for you to keep your costs down. Let's talk a little bit about payment gateways. A provider like Stripe, that type of provider performs both the functions of a gateway, processing the card, and the merchant account, the part that's moving the money. When you move into doing Interchange Plus model, this is a more traditional type companies, banks, big corporations, merchant account companies, and such. Not all of them have their own payment gateway that they're bundling together, or it's typically not one product. Or they might have some proprietary gateway that's frankly never going to work with your donation page or any fundraising platform out there. So oftentimes you have to get a separate payment gateway to go with the merchant account. There are many gateways on the market. This is just a few: USA ePay, Authorized.net, NMI. Gateways are typically inexpensive, typically a small monthly fee and a small transaction fee. You can ask your merchant provider, and when you sign up, hey, what gateway am I going to get? What gateways do you offer? What gateways do you sell? Maybe they'll even bundle in one for free for you. The trick is to save here, never buy a gateway direct from the gateway company. It's always going to be cheaper through a reseller or through the merchant account provider, who are resellers of gateways. In this category, here at For Good Cause, we support Authorized.net. Has great security and is the most widely used gateway by these types of providers. So you can hook it to virtually any merchant account company. So it's pretty portable. So that's why we like it. And one of the biggest questions I get in regards to credit card fees is, can't my donors just pay all these fees for me? Not really. And I don't think you should really ever put it to them in that manner. It's a pretty misleading marketing tactic sometimes by fundraising platforms, sometimes by merchant account companies. There's so many sites and services now that tell a nonprofit, just don't worry about the credit card fees. Yeah, your donors will cover it. Then they ask the donors to give them as much as 15%, 20% on top of the gift as a fee for that website, for that service. They make the donors click to opt out of the fee. Sometimes you have to click more than once to opt out. Sometimes that fee is just for the platform that you're using, and you still have to pay the credit card fees that we've been going over. Sometimes it's included, but when the donor doesn't cover it, that big percentage that they've set up, whatever that is, it's on you. And do you want your donor to think that you have to pay 5%, 8%, 10%, 15% in credit card fees? Probably not. Kind of turns them off a little bit to kind of think about what your costs are in that particular area. We believe in a better way to ask donors to help with your processing fees. And it's really about asking them to help. It's not about asking them to cover it or pay the fee. So you can include a box, yes, on your donation form to ask for an additional gift that relates to those costs. But make it just that. Make it an additional gift. It should not be seen as a fee. It should not be seen as a tip to some other company that they have never heard of. Don't force the donor into it. Allow them to opt in. Give them the joy of opting in and giving a little more. Not the avoidance, that bad feeling of them clicking multiple times to opt out of something. Your goal here is just to have the donor increase their gift beyond what they intended. And that extra amount should go to your nonprofit, not to some third party. You're just informing them that you have these types of fees, and you're offering them the ability to increase their donation. It should not be a fee that's siphoned off by your fundraising platform. You typically are just going to flat out come out better financially if the donor checks the box, increases the gift, and all that money comes to you, and you simply pay the low processing fees that you've negotiated with your own payment provider. As I've said before, avoid platforms that have platform transaction fees. They're just tacking more onto this whole process for you. We've been helping our clients switch off those types of plans. I'm going to link to an article on our blog about this topic. I certainly welcome any questions and discussion on that. Reach out to me at any time or post something in the chat there for me. I want to hear from you. There's certainly some other ways to save, and we've kind of been mentioning these other ways to save. Like if you're in an Interchange Plus pricing plan, encourage debit cards. You're going to save a ton of money. A ton of money. There's lots of other things. There's other things that you can do here. First thing that I want you to do is watch out for what I would call gotcha fees, hidden or other fees that you shouldn't really have to pay. If you see these in your contract, you might want to look for another provider. These are things like early termination fees. That's charging you hundreds of dollars if you have to cancel your contract early. Separate security compliance fees. Yeah, every merchant has to be security compliant, but you shouldn't have to pay a big extra fee for that. Avoid annual fees. Avoid monthly minimums. This is where you're charged a fee if you don't reach a particular volume that month. Watch out for expensive equipment leasing. Typically, if you need a card swiper, some sort of terminal, most of the times you're better off buying it, or look for a merchant provider that will actually reprogram the one that you have when you're coming over to them. And watch out for that bait and switch. Remember, we talked about that tiered pricing model. Oftentimes, you're going to get a quote for that lowest bucket, that qualifying rate, and you'll think, boy, that is cheap, that is wonderful. And in your mind, you'll think that's all I'm ever going to pay. But again, they're not telling you that most cards aren't going to qualify in that bucket. And you're going to end up in that higher bucket, and you're going to pay a whole lot more. And is customer service free? Or are they charging you to call in when you have a question? You could also save on your processing costs by encouraging donors to pay by e-check. This is where your donor will put in their banking information online and make a donation that way. Kind of works just like a physical check. They're just putting in their routing number, putting in their accounting number, goes into the processor, it's held for 5 days, and then that money is transferred over. And it's transferred in a way you're skipping that what's called the interchange network, so there is no interchange fee there. So these processing fees are less. Typically between a good benchmark, 0.75% to 1% of each transaction is something good to look for. An option for e-check processing, you can get that a lot of times through your merchant processor. Sometimes you can get that through the gateway that you're working with. This can be something really beneficial for nonprofits, not only on this cost side, but on the revenue side as well, especially nonprofits that are doing monthly giving. If you think about it, a checking account, those numbers, they don't really change on a regular basis like cards do. Cards expire. Bank accounts typically do not. So if you're doing recurring giving, you are just keeping those givers giving every single month in a much better fashion than you are with credit cards. So another thing that you can try here. So this webinar has been very focused around cost, but is cost the only factor that you need to consider when choosing a payment provider? Absolutely 100% no. There's lots of other factors that you can consider when choosing your payment provider. These are things like security and fraud protection. They should have protections in place to keep your card information and your donor's information safe and secure. You need to make sure that your website or fundraising platform is compatible with the processor that you're setting up or gateway that you're setting up. Portability, can you easily switch to another provider once you get set up? What payment types do they offer? What card types? Do they have e-check, digital wallets, etc.? What's the donor experience going to be when you hook up to them? This is where a provider like PayPal becomes problematic because, you have to jump off your page to go to PayPal to finish the checkout process. Other providers, other gateways, do that on your own page and keep them on your page. Look at that. That's going to be important for you. Customer service. What's their rating in that area? And are they actually outsourcing their customer service somewhere else? A lot of times when you get set up with a merchant account, you're working with a reseller. Ask that reseller, who am I going to be boarded with and who's going to be providing my day-to-day customer service? And make sure that company has a good rating. And are they nonprofit friendly? So do they offer a discount? Do they, we talked about that, but do they align with your mission? Are they actually doing things in the community to give back in such a way? That may be attractive to you right there. So price, that's going to be a major part of how you choose a payment provider, but it's not going to be everything. I certainly could do a whole webinar just on the things that we list here. So, as you start to do your research, I'm going to offer you some places that you can go to kind of delve a little deeper. These are sites that offer resources and reviews on credit card processing. Payment processors are some of the most reviewed companies. You can find a lot of stuff out there on them. A lot of stuff that you can Google, a lot of places that you can go. Here's just a few sites that do reviews. Trustpilot, of course, Better Business Bureau, One of my favorites is Merchant Maverick. Not only do they have independent reviews, but tons of articles and videos to help you understand the complete ins and outs of credit card processing. I'm going to drop a couple articles from them in the chat area. One, a link to a list of providers that offer nonprofit discounts. Again, we said you want to look for that. And second, a link to a list of the providers with those top 5-star ratings. I certainly encourage you to check that out. Check those, bookmark that page and check that out. I'm also available as a resource, so reach out to me and say, who do we have accounts with and who do we work with and what's the options out there, and from my experience, I'm glad to pass that along. Okay, it's homework time. If anybody's ever been to one of my webinars, you know I give out homework. Today's homework is to figure out your effective rate. How much are you paying for credit card processing? So your effective rate, that's your total processing fees divided by your total transaction volume. I'm going to drop another link from Merchant Maverick to help you with that calculation. This is an article that has a good discussion about reading your statement and understanding your costs. Reading a merchant account statement is oftentimes one of the most confusing endeavors ever. Because a lot of providers are trying to hide what they're charging you there. It's sometimes very confusing. So this article kind of goes into that a little bit. Run the numbers. See if you're doing as well as you can. If you're looking at another provider, if you're looking at something that you're wondering how well you're doing, again, you can always ask for a cost comparison out there. Hopefully I've given you a lot today to have in your tool belt to do that negotiation. You'll understand what a provider is paying, and you can be there to say, first, what pricing plan works for me, and then when I'm talking to that provider, how can I get the best possible rate for myself? Thanks for sticking around to this point. I'm going to drop a final resource for you on the right here. This is our Choosing the Right Processor guide. Just a guide on some things to consider when looking at payment providers, and then a kind of a versus breakdown of a couple of things that we support here at For Good Cause. We'd love feedback on this document. Let us know how it works for you. Again, if you didn't catch all the links and other resources that I dropped during the presentation, no problem. I'll send it all out with the replay video. Thank you very much for attending, watching this webinar. I hope what we went over today help you save on your credit card processing so you can keep more of what you raise. I'm going to leave the session open a few more moments to give you an opportunity to post any final questions you have. I will follow up on any question posted. If you're watching an on-demand recording, you can reach out to me here with any this contact information with any questions that you have. Or if you want to request any resource, please feel free to do that. If you missed anything, I'll send out that replay of the webinar and the resources probably by Monday, midday. Look for it then. Once I close the webinar, you'll be redirected to a survey. Please let me know how I did today. I hope you found this useful. Thanks again for attending and for what you're doing in your community. And I will see you at our next webinar. Thanks so much.